The Oxford Martin Programme on Global Development at Oxford University found that among the countries that industrialised early, places like the US, UK, Australia, Germany and France, working hours have actually decreased dramatically in the last 150 years. Astonishingly, people back in 1870 in these countries did as many hours of work between just January and July as we do now in a whole year. They could have taken 5 months off and still worked as many hours as we do. The fact is, most of us today have more time off, more time for leisure and creativity than ever before. But we're actually not that good at rest. In his 2008 book, Outliers, the best-selling author and social commentator Malcolm Gladwell makes the case for what he calls the 10,000-hour rule for greatness. The rule was based on a major study published in the Psychological Review of students at Berlin's elite Academy of Music. The study found that the key ingredient separating virtuoso musicians from the merely brilliant wasn't native talent, but the number of hours they practiced over the years. Virtuosity was the result of 10,000 hours of work. Gladwell found that the same principle operates among elite chess players, top sportsmen and women, and even computer geniuses like Bill Gates. Raw talent is important, of course. Long, hard work is the key. 10,000 hours, he said, is the magic number of greatness. But there's an aspect of the original study that Gladwell didn't mention. It's true that virtuosos practiced more than most, but they had another secret ingredient. They rested more, and more deliberately. On average, these virtuosos slept an hour a day more than the others, which they mostly achieved through daytime naps. And they were more deliberate in their rest. They consciously set aside an average of 25 hours a week for meaningful downtime. That's more than 3 hours a day. As one well-known expert writes of the so-called 10,000-hour rule, quote, "Those who research world-class performance focus only on what students do in the gym or track or practice room. This is how we've come to believe that world-class performance comes after 10,000 hours of practice. But that's wrong. It comes after 10,000 hours of deliberate practice, 12,500 hours of deliberate rest, and 30,000 hours of sleep." Those are the words of Dr. Alex Pang.
What I mean when I talk about rest is any activity that recharges the mental and physical batteries that we spend working. And an important part of that is that rest is not just passive. So we think these days of rest almost as a sort of negative space defined by the absence of work rather than its own thing. And this is actually a rather new concept. Aristotle talked about work as a sort of drudgery and leisure as the place in which humans could flourish. The argument that I make in Rest is that we should see work and rest as partners, as two parts of our lives that complement and really complete each other. That even for those of us who love our work, rest is essential for making it possible to do that work well, for drawing as much meaning from it as possible, and for doing it as long as we can throughout our lives.
One study of mid-20th century scientists found an M-shaped curve when it came to the extent of their research output. The scientists who published most were only in the lab or office for 20 hours a week. Those who worked for 35 hours dipped well below the 20-hour scientists. And those who put in 50 hours beat the 35-hour scientists, but they never caught up to the 20-hour scientists. The take-home from all this? Well, working 20 hours with regular intervals for rest can be more effective than working more than double that amount of time. It's so weird and a little bit wonderful.
If you look at longitudinal studies of thousands and thousands of people over the course of decades, you find that people who have hobbies, who take regular vacations, who are more mindful of their leisure and actually make use of it, tend to go farther in their careers, live longer, they age more gracefully, they're less likely to have chronic illnesses, and they have generally self-reported happier, healthier lives than people who are constant workaholics.
One of the best ways to experience rest is to exercise. Studies of the effects of fitness programs on the brain and general health have shown that exercise improves brain structure, just as it does the cardiovascular system and muscles. In a 2015 German and Finnish study, before and after brain scans of overweight and obese subjects showed dramatic improvement in the volume of grey matter and white matter over the course of the 3-month fitness and weight loss program. Scientists have also found that mice running on wheels generate twice the number of new neurons in their hippocampus as mice who are sedentary. These studies, and plenty of others like them, help explain how scientists, writers, painters, and architects who rest through exercise manage to stay productive decades after the competition has burned out.
The importance of serious rest, the importance of leisure, of hobbies, of time to reflect, and time in which you can ponder the big mysteries and develop as a person. There is a deep history of respect for rest throughout human history. And I think part of what I'm trying to do with this book is to reconnect people to it, to update it a little bit, but to say that this may sound like old stuff, but it's really old wisdom.
Busyness culture is everywhere, and we applaud and reward it. The typical response to the question, "How are you going?" seems to be busy. And everyone goes, tell me about it. I reckon the creator winces every time we do that. Winces not just at the busyness itself, but at the way we seem to prize busyness as a virtue. But it's not a virtue. Busyness can actually be the enemy of excellence. It can cripple productivity, creativity, and spirituality, just as rest can nourish all these things. And perhaps that's partly why the Bible speaks so much about Shabbat, Sabbath, rest. I remember one season in my own life when I really needed this lesson. It was the late 1990s, early 2000s. I was working half-time for one church in Sydney and half-time as a consultant for 65 other churches on Sydney's North Shore. I worked full days, I was out 5 nights, and I was chipping away at my PhD in the wee hours of the morning. Plenty of people do those kinds of hours. There's nothing particularly remarkable about that. But I found the pace detrimental to my health, my relationships, my friendships, family, and you know what? It was a hazard to my Christian faith. This may resonate particularly with Christian viewers and perhaps especially Christian leaders, but my point is meant to be broader. If Christian busyness can damage family, health, output, outlook, and even faith, I reckon any kind of busyness can diminish our psychological, spiritual, and physical lives. So, dear viewer, let me wish you and your loved ones, and perhaps especially those who work for you, Shabbat Shalom, the flourishing of rest. See ya.